friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon, and welcome to part 2 of my Il Meneghello haul. If you recall, in part 1, I showed you these boxes very briefly, and I did a deep dive into my beautiful La Corte dei Tarocchi deck from Il Meneghello. Today, we're going to look at these two decks side by side, just these two decks. And what are they? One of them is, let me read it from the box, Tarocco di Besançon from 1700. So this is a Besançon deck from 1700. And this is Tarocco Marsiglia Svizzero. So this is a Swiss Tarot de Marseille from 1804. Now, they're both considered somewhat Swiss decks. Now, the Besançon is an area of France, to the east of France, right near Switzerland. And a lot of the Besançon decks are produced in Switzerland. I'm not sure where this one is produced. I think this one is actually a French deck, which eventually migrates to Switzerland. This is a Swiss deck. This has the Pope and Popess replaced with Juno and Jupiter. This does not. So we're going to do a side-by-side of these two gorgeous decks from Il Meneghello. So if you'd like to take a peek, just hold on a second and I'll turn the camera down. Friends, here we have them. On the left is the Besançon, on the right is the Swiss deck. Let me take off the plastic and dive into the decks with you. These are both in very standard Il Meneghello boxes. You can see that they have a very standardized box with a card on the front attached and then a red wax seal placed on it to make it look a little bit luxe, right? A little bit high class. And I love that. I love that touch of elegance to these boxes. We've got the sun on both of these boxes, which is a nice choice, I believe. But we can already see the differences. Now we have two figures. Are they male? Probably. This pair of figures, one might read this figure as perhaps female, one might not. I think the gender, if you're into gender, is up to your personal preferences in reading these decks. But we have very different suns, right? We have the flames coming off of in a circular pattern around this sun, whereas this one, we have the flames, or whatever those things are, falling from the sun. Yeah, the radiance of this sun and the radiance of this one is very different. And notice the hair on the sun in this card, which is a very interesting touch. We've got very different walls. We've got very different coverings to these two, let's call them children, perhaps. It looks like these two have, the red around the necks is interesting. Yeah, is it supposed to be some article of clothing, or is it just a blotch? A lot of blotches in these decks, right? We also have a period at the end of Soleil. Yeah, Le Soleil. So remember, these are not prettied up and redrawn. These are recreated facsimiles by Il Meneghello. So here we go into the deck. Again, this is the Tarot de Besançon, 1700. And the inside of the box, the insides of all of these boxes are the same. But just in case you did not see my previous video with La Corte dei Tarocchi, same box, basically. And this one is Tarocco Marsiglia Svizzero. I'm sorry, that's right, yeah, Svizzero. 1804. This one is deck 214 of 2000. This one is 542 of 1500. But they are both, well, no, this is a second edition. This is a third edition, if that means anything to you. These editions, I'm sure, are going to keep rolling out, even though the initial creator has passed away. The company is still creating decks and reprinting decks, so that's good to remember. So take off the title card, and this is what the backs of this deck will look like. And oh, this one's got plastic around it. That's interesting. Most Il Meneghello decks do not have internal plastic. So let me get rid of this plastic. Boom! So plastic is going away. Here we go. Okay, the plastic is reattaching itself to my hand. Here we go. And get rid of the... Here are the backs. This is what the backs of the deck for the Svizzero, the Swiss deck, look like. Now can you see that there's a difference in size between these? And let me pull in my trusty Yoav Ben Dov deck just for a moment for size comparison. Yeah. As far as the cards go, the Marseille deck is just a smidge larger than a US Games Tarot de Marseille deck, as represented by the Yoav Ben Dov. The Svizzera deck is smaller than a US Games Yoav Ben Dov deck. The width is the same, but the height is just a little bit shorter. So the Svizzera deck is just a little bit smaller than the Besançon. Okay, let me take this out of the box. We've got, whoa, let's get our court cards all together. Take it out of the box. There we go. And inside the box, you also get a small pamphlet written in Italian and English about the deck. Just as the Tarot of Marseille is not originally from Marseille, so the variant known as Besançon Tarot is connected to the French town more by convention than in fact. It was only at the beginning of the 18th century and for a few decades that, thanks to the production of J. Jaeger, this particular version of the tarot became a Besançon specialty, a geographical area that extends from the east of France to the north of Switzerland and the northwest of Germany, had been the area of diffusion for almost 2 centuries. And the manufacturers of playing cards from centers such as Strasbourg, Epinal, Belfort, Colmar in France, Costanza, Mannheim in Germany, Solothurn in Switzerland had been its printers from at least the second half of the 17th century onwards. So, from 1650 onwards. German or Swiss creation, between these two poles oscillate the most consistent hypotheses on the origin of the model of our tarot, which then differs from that of Marseille, essentially for 2 cards. The Popess and the Pope, respectively replaced by Juno and Jupiter. The Ace of Cups for the transformation into a rounded and theatrically majestical Ciborum, Baroque compared to the traditional Gothic cup, all pentacles. Okay, the grammar of this sentence is a little odd, but I think you get the drift. In the replacement of the Pope and Popess with Jupiter and Juno, we wanted to see the act of modesty towards Catholic religious sensitivity in the area of the Counter-Reformation, or rather, on the contrary, a subtle satire and a pure and simple elimination in line with the reformist principles. What is certain is that during the French Revolution, the playing card printers referred to the Soleil laicized Besançon tarot as a model for their revolutionary tarots, in which the royal attributes were suppressed. But Jupiter and Juno, in the long run, with their accentuated Baroque characteristics, turned out to be a little too contrasting and extraneous to the content of all other cards, a mirror of the Gothic age. For this reason, the spread of our tarot, which had reached its apex during the second half of the 1700s, and the tarot that is reprinted here is particularly rich and significant example. Is a particularly rich and significant example, was increasingly confined in the 1800s to some areas of Switzerland. In our tarot, we also find the manufacturer's name in the Two of Cups, J.B. Benoit of Strasbourg, while on the cards of the King of Coins and the Chariot, we note the initials of the name of the engraver, F.I. Okay, so this actually might be a German deck. Intéressant, mais oui. And in this deck we have Tarot Svizzero. This should be a Swiss deck. And we have the Fool coming up at the top of both. I'm not going to read the pamphlet for this one because, for one thing, it's very, very small. And for another thing, if you get the deck, you can read it yourself. I'll show it to you here. If you zoom in, maybe you can read it. But let's not spend much more time on this, and let's get right to the decks. These cards are starting to curl a little bit because of the dryness of this room, I believe. But you can see that these decks are, the card stock of these decks is thinner than the la makes no sense, does it? Than La Corte dei Tarocchi, which I showed you in the first video. Now this cardstock is much thinner and it will be much easier to shuffle. However, it will probably also be a little bit more delicate in that, well, no, we'll check shuffling at the end of this video. But let's look at thickness. Yeah, here is the Besançon deck, and here is the US Games deck, which was a reprinting of the, what do we call him? Yoav Bendov deck. So you can see, this is a thinner cardstock, but it's still a thicker deck. Now, this will be easier to shuffle than La Corte dei Tarocchi, but it's still a thicker deck. And let's do a comparison with the Svizzero, the Swiss deck. Again, the cardstock is thinner, but still thicker, just a smidge thicker than the Yoav Bendov by US Games. Okay, so for those of you who are interested in that, there it is. And let's look at these two decks. I believe they will be in the same order. I don't think I will have to reorganize these decks. They're probably printed in the same order. But let's see. There were some cards that were out of order in my La Corte dei Tarocchi deck. So let's see how these go. So what do we have? We have two Fools. The animals are different. Yeah? Colors, of course, are different. And but generally, the look of the look on the face is a little bit different as well. Yeah, this beard looks a little bit more detailed than this one. And remember, this deck was printed later. However, you'll notice that on his socks there is more detail. Now, this socks, leggings, probably leggings. There is more detail on the leggings than in this one. They are both wearing very well-defined boots. No bells on this Fool, right? Bells on this one's collar. The cane is, walking stick is a little bit different. There's a little bit of a different head on the top there. So there are some differences between these decks. Yeah, I think the most notable difference is the animal that is attacking. This one looks more feline. This one looks a little less feline to me. Plants are also different. Okay, moving right along. Le Batelier. Some differences, right? Not hugely different, although this wand reminds me a little bit of the Noble wand, in that it's a little bit, how do I say this? It looks a little bit more phallic than this one does, yeah? This wand has two little knobs at both ends. This one does not, has one little knob at one side, and it's a little bit short. His hat's a little bit more decorated. So it looks like the outfits, the clothes are going to be a little bit more decorated. We notice that here in the leggings, there's that same decoration, which we don't get in the Besançon, which is an earlier deck. And here we have Junon. Yeah. Very interesting, right? Yeah. No book. Looking a little bit like she's giving that gesture of the magician in the Rider-Waite-Smith of as above, so below. Got a little bird on the side. Looking very free, very almost like a Rider-Waite-Smith Empress, in a sense to me, because she looks so free, so open, so out in the air, whereas this Pope-S is very heavily clothed, sitting in a chair, removed from nature, holding a book. Interesting. Okay, moving on to the Empress. Very similar, yes? Crowns are there. I mean, there are differences. The crowns are different. The draping of her gown is very different. She is holding a shield. Both are holding a wand, although scepter. The tops of the scepters are different. We have a kind of fleur de lis in the Swiss deck, whereas this one has the traditional globe with the cross, right? Which is interesting because this deck is the one that has the Juno instead of the Pope-S. But it retains the cross. There's no cross here. And we go to the Emperor. Look at these two gentlemen. Very different scepters. Now this one retaining the cross with the globe. This one very different. Hats are generally the same, although the hair on in this deck looks a little bit more... Yeah, the hair in this deck looks a little bit more well-detailed than the hair in this deck, whereas the clothes in this deck look more detailed than in this deck. Again, we have the leggings having the little V decoration. Okay, moving on to Jupiter. Yeah, looking very Jupiter-esque, lightning bolts in his hand, although he seems to have rather feminine-looking, well, female-looking breasts, doesn't he? What do you think? Which body looks more male? Well, no, you can't really see. Yeah, look at the Juno. The Juno looks female. She's covered up. She's got some skirting going on. But the Jupiter card does look a little bit feminine in some respects, which is interesting. The large eagle behind him, very good thing to think about. Birds are different from Jupiter and Juno. But he's all there on his own. There are no acolytes. There are no other beings there with this god of old. Fire as well. Okay, moving on to l'Amoureux. L'Amoureux. So, the cupids are pointing a little bit differently. Yeah, this cupid looks to be pointing towards the feet again. Nice leggings. Looks like this set of leggings has a band around the knee. This lover looks like he's wearing boots, doesn't he? But the arrow seems to be pointed more towards the head than the feet. This cupid is blindfolded, whereas this one is not. This cupid has a kind of sun behind them. This is coming just out of the clouds with what looks like a ceiling above, doesn't it? Doesn't that look like an interior ceiling of a building? Wings are very different between the cupids. Clothes on the women are different. We have blue here and red here. Interesting. And the tunic on the central figure here is very bell-shaped, isn't it? Less bell-shaped here. Less. Not bell-shaped, but less bell-shaped. Okay, good. So moving on to this chariot, Le Chariot. So we have a printer here, FI, and a printer here, JR. Horses are interesting. This horse looks like he's not paying any attention to this one, or she's not paying any attention to this one. Whereas these two horses seem to be paying more attention to each other. Interesting. I had a dream about a white horse last night. Okay, that's neither here nor there. We notice the difference in the scallop in the chariot at the top. So one being more of a type 1 or one being more of a type 2, I think we could say. Yeah, this is more of a type 1 looking chariot. This is more of a type 2, I believe. Also the cupids, the difference in that. So we'll have to see when we get to the moon. Is one going to be facing forward and one facing to the side? Let's check that out. Here we go on to the Justice card, La Justice. Okay, interesting. We have La Justice, and we just have Justice here. Behind her, it looks much more like a chair. These could be wings to me. I mean, it's open to interpretation. Are these wings? Is it a chair? Yeah. Let's see. We have the scales looking very similar. The swords looking very similar. Different coloration, but yes, similar. But notice here at the bottom, we've got some foreground structure going on here, looking like mounds of some sort, where we don't have any of that here. Which of these justice people, looks more pleasant? They actually both look very calm, very kind-looking justices. They don't look unhappy by any means to me. Do you see breasts on this justice card? Interesting. Okay, moving on to the Hermit. Very different hermits. Now we've got a brown cape, we've got a blue cape. This cape is more open, and we can see perhaps light shining on the inside of this cape, whereas this cape is completely closed. The hood. This hermit looks just a little bit Franciscan to me. Just a little. We don't get the knotted cord around the waist, but still. The color reminds me of Franciscans. Because I went to the Franciscan School of Theology and I see brown, I think Franciscans. Although, remember, truth be told, not all Franciscans wear brown. There are Franciscans that wear black, and there are Franciscans that also wear gray. There are different orders within the overarching Franciscan order. So I'm from a school that was made majority brown Franciscan, so I keep thinking brown. Franciscan. Canes are different. Yeah, the lamps are different as well, aren't they? And we notice that there is color in the hair here, kind of smudgy color in the hair, but no color in the hair here. Moving on to the 10. There it is, yes. That is the 10. So, La Roue de Fortune. There's no article here, just Roue de Fortune. We have the La here. But similar, yeah. Creature going up on the right, creature going down on the left. The handles are different, aren't they? Yeah, the handle is on the left here and on the right here. These creatures are also in a different pose. This creature looks much more seated. The Sphinx-like creature is in a more resting pose, whereas this one is up on its haunches. Although they're both holding the sword in the same paw. We get the sense of wings here, whereas this looks more like a cloak to me. Does it look the same to you? We get the bar that connects the wheel from the left to the right here, whereas This bar kind of ends here. We don't get that connection on this deck, in this deck. Does this look a little bit like a crocodile or an alligator to you? Suddenly this looks like an eye, this looks like a nose, it looks like a crocodile sneaking beneath the wheel of fortune to me. Am I crazy? Tell me if I'm crazy in the comments below. Moving on to the Force. Here we go. Notice the green eye here. That's an interesting touch. Both facing the same direction. This lion looks a lot more natural to me. Now this lion looks a little odd because of the difference in the hair. Yeah, this mane and the paws sticking out they look like different creatures to me. Whereas this looks like one unified creature. Yeah? The inside of this mouth looks a lot more cleanly drawn than this one, frankly speaking. But we've got the same gesture from the woman holding open the mouth. The eyes are looking in the same direction. This woman has a much longer face than her, doesn't she? And in this case, I would say that her clothes look just a bit more refined than the clothes on the Swiss deck. Here we go to Le Pendu. This is beautiful. I love these two guys. Now, this is the reason that I wanted to get the Swiss deck, because of this Le Pendu. I just noticed that. This is Pendu, this is Pendu. But I love this Pendu. Now, I love his face, I love his outfit, his clothes. I love what looks like feathers to me sticking in contrary to gravity. I love the stock here. I like that these are so formal looking, whereas these look like bare, raw, cut trees, right? The hands are behind the back here. We don't get the hands sticking out like we do in the Noble. And I love the curve on his chest as well as his neck here. We get the four shape here, but we don't. Both feet are tied up here as well. So there are many differences between these two decks. Here we go with Death facing in exactly the opposite directions. We get the similar figures. We got a hand here, we got a hand here, we got a crowned figure here, we got a more, I don't know, female looking figure here. More body parts in this one. The sickles are different, right? We've got a little bit of a red stripe here and a blue one here. But there's a lot more blue in this card 13 than there is here. There's more red in this one. And still, the skirting on this figure here is red, while the skirting on this one is blue. So there are very interesting contrasts here. Now, one blue leg, one pink leg, both of them rather pink at the top and then different colored at the bottom. Very different skulls, right? Very interesting. Okay, moving on to another named card, Temperance. Lovely, lovely. Interesting. This, I don't know, this doesn't look like a European face to me. Or it doesn't look like such a Western European face. I don't know. Very interesting. Pots are very similarly held. Wings are similar, though there is a little more detail in this wing. But these wings look a little bit more refined, like the hair looks more refined to me. These look rougher. And here we go with the Diable. Very similar devils, yeah? We got the furry legs, nothing in the belly. Although the torches are on opposite sides, aren't they? And here we have the name of the creators here, which we don't get in this. Par, four. Grave par So this is printed for J Prochet. This is not a very common thing that we see, is it? But these devils really are remarkably similar, considering the differences in, for example, the Lover's card and the Chariot. These devils are very, very similar. Okay, so here we go with the Tower. Okay, so the towers are similar, right? Although, isn't it interesting that this top doesn't look like it really fits this tower, does it? Looks much smaller. Whereas this top definitely fits this tower. The stream of fire from the sun is thinner and more controlled looking to me. Whereas this one looks much more all over the place. We got colored droplets coming from here, no color here. But we've got the similar shape of the figure, one clearly falling. Although, notice this, I had not noticed this in another deck. We've got this person's feet here. Whereas this one looks like he or she could be, or they could be crawling out from the tower. This one, we got the feet falling. So this one is much more clearly a falling figure than this one. 3 arches, 3 windows. Notice the crack coming down here, which we don't get in this deck. Okay, moving on to Les Trois. Here we are with Les Trois. Beautiful, beautiful ladies. Rounder breasts, kind of, I don't know, almost non-existent breasts. I mean, they're way up there on in her shoulder blades, aren't they? Very interestingly placed breasts, if we consider those to be breasts. Water pouring out. One clearly in the water. This one also looks like it's pouring into the water to me. Both feet look like they're on land here. 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on land. But both urns look like they're pouring into the water. We only get the bird in the Swiss deck. We don't get a bird in the Besançon. And the difference in that star is very interesting as well. Yeah? Looking very stylistic, looking more, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's looking more like floral to me. Okay, and here we go with La Lune. La Lune, we've got the crustacean coming up from the water. We got the 2 different dogs. 1 blue, 1 pink. Although there's some extra red popping around here on their ears and their tongues. 2 different towers. Okay, yes, so we got the front-facing moon and the side-facing moon. So more of a type 1, type 2 deck. Although the devils were the same, remember that. So there are mixes here. What the heck are these things up in the clouds? That's interesting. What do you think those are? Are those planets? I mean, is this a night sky and are those planets rather than clouds? But if this would be a night sky, right? I don't know. What do you think? This crustacean looks more natural than this crustacean to me. Very interesting. Okay, so here we go with Le Soleil. Very similar. Yep, we just saw that on the cover of the boxes. Although I just noticed something, which I did not notice when I looked at the cover because of the wax seal. But notice that this figure's legs are partially covered by the grass, whereas we see the full legs on this one. I love that wall has that jutting protrusion here, whereas this is just a straight old wall. Although I must admit, I like the hair on the sun. The sun with adieu. Okay, and here is Les Jugements. Okay, we get judgment with an I here and judgment with a J. An older spelling, a more modern spelling, because J is not originally a Latin letter. It's a later addition to Latin letters. However, we have the J in Junon. We have the J in Jupiter for this deck. We have, let's see, I think there was an I for, okay, no. Let's see, was there another J here? Okay, I don't know, but it's interesting that this J, instead of a J, we've used an I here, where the rest were J's. All figures here being the same skin tone, whereas this one is blue. We've got the Swiss cross here, very clearly Swiss cross, yeah? Whereas this one is yellow and red, very interesting difference, even though this is a Swiss deck. We don't get the horn in the mouth on this one, whereas we do get it here. The wings are different, right? Clouds are also a little bit different. Darker clouds, whiter clouds. Very simple rays coming down from behind this angel, whereas we've got red rays, blue, gray rays, gold rays coming here. This landscape, definitely land. This could be clouds even, if we wanted them to be clouds, couldn't they? Okay, moving on to Le Monde. Okay, so very round little breasts here. What do you think? Could this be a male or perhaps even a hermaphroditic monde figure? Notice the ground here looks a little bit water-like, whereas this is definitely green. Though banding on the wreath around this figure is very different from this one. But we got the 4 creatures around. We got the wand, 1 wand in the hand. This hand's on the leg. Now we got 2 wands here. And again, there's a covering to the genitalia here, and this one just has the loose scarf, which is more similar to a type 2 deck. And this more of a type 1 deck. More of a, not exactly. Okay, so there are differences. So let's go with pentacles first. Let me go to find the pentacles, or I'm sorry, they're not pentacles in this deck. They are called coins. Okay, so here we go, coins. Very different, right? Yeah, the decoration, top, bottom here, are very different from this one. The coins are also very different. And here we go with the 2. Now, we don't get any information about the creator or the printer or location here. We do very faintly get it here. It's all but been rubbed off. We have 1804, and we have the name of the printer here, just barely visible. Nothing here. It's interesting. And there's the date up here as well. Don't see that very often. And here we go with the 3. Notice that we get numbers here on the 3, no numbers on this side. And well, I don't know. Is this upside down or is it not? I mean, should it be read like this or not? I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to say this is right side up because I like my 3s to be shaped like this. It was put in the box differently, but I'm going to do it that way. Me do me, boo. I'll do me, boo. Okay, so 3s. Let's go to 4. Yep, we've still got the numbers on the 4s. And we've got an initial in the center here. We got the horns coming out. No horns on the Besançon. And we got the Swiss horns coming out on the 4. Looking a little bit more festive. But now this 4 looks like it's upside down as well. Yes, that 4 was upside down as well. Look, there's a figure here. A human figure in the center, which I don't see very often. Usually it's a shield, right? Okay, here we go with the 5. Heck, is this 5 upside down too? Who knows? But similar but different. I would say that of the cards, these are more similar, although this looks a little bit more moving towards fleur de lis, whereas this one's definitely just a little round baton sticking inside. And here we have the 6. A much simpler design on this one, on the Besançon from the Swiss. Now these floral decorations are much more detailed, much more lush. And the 7, yes, the 7. Now the 7 looks right side up to me. At least for me, this is right side up. Yeah, this flower is pointed up, which I believe is correct, for me at least. We don't get the flower up here in the center, do we? So the floral decorations in the Swiss are more lush, shall we say. Here we go with the 8. Now, no flowers, just leaves here. Now we get flowers, 2 flowers here, 2 flowers here. The 9. The 9, here we go. We can see how different the backgrounds on these cards are. Yeah? Much lighter background, you can see that, can't you? But we have floral decorations again here in the 9. And the 10. Look at that. Beautifully done. So I don't know if I could say I prefer one deck over the other, frankly, because I like some points in the Besançon deck more than this one, and I like some points in the Swiss deck more than this one. Here we have the... Why do we have the Cavalier first? Where is our page? Okay, page is next. Interesting order for these decks. Here we have Cavalier, Chevalier, de Denier. 1 up in the ground. We got a wand in the hand. A baton in the hand. These horses, the head on this horse looks so small. This horse looks much more natural. Interesting. And here we go with the Valet. Notice, the Valet de Denier. The title here is on the side. The title here is on the bottom. We've got a coin on the ground here, but this one seems to be floating, doesn't it? But both pages are looking the same way. We got decoration on the socks again, or the leggings. Here we get the Rien de Denier, spelled differently with an I, here with a Y. Much softer looking face, much sharper looking face, I'd say, and the hands look very different. Her hand looks a little creepy to me. Just a little bit creepy to me. But notice her seat, the seat here. This seat is wrapping around her. This seat looks like it's all behind her. This is the side of the seat. Interesting. Which outfit do you like better? Which crown hat do you like better? Here is a Roi de Denier. Notice the floor pattern down here. We got a landscape. He's seated outside in the Swiss deck, but here in the Besançon, definitely inside. His chair looks a little bit more elegant than his, looks more sturdy. His hat looks a little bit softer, more detailed than his. His denier is smaller than his denier. Does size matter? You tell me. And here we go with, okay, so let's see. Let's move to the wands. Let's move to the wands. Here we go with the wands. Okay, hand reaching out of cloud. Similar lush decoration around the wands, which is interesting. Color in this cloud, yes? And here we go with the 2 of wands. Lovely. Notice the wands are different, right? This is a definite Marseille-looking wand. This is more of a Swiss-looking wand with the rounder ends to it, to them. Here we go with the 3 of wands. Very similar, although we notice the coloration difference, yeah? All red here, 2 white, 1 central red. The 4. Very easy to see the separation between these wands, although we do have the weaving pattern here. The wands here, the color coming out of the sides make them a little bit, I'm sorry. It's easy to see the separation here as well. I was going down a rabbit hole. But we notice that the weaving pattern, the color of the weaving pattern is different. We don't get the red center here that we get in here. Here we go with the Five of Wands. Also, notice that flower is interesting. I'm sorry, these cards are a little bit bending. They're bending a little bit. This flower is very interesting to me. I've not seen this kind of flower much before. Of course, I haven't seen that many different decks, to be honest. But this flower is very interesting to me. Okay, moving again to the Five. Here we go with the Five. Now, white crossing red in the back, whereas these are all red. And the Six. Oh, wow, look at that. Look at that decoration. Lovely. Lovely. The detail in the Swiss decks is absolutely lovely. And here we go with the Seven. Notice that these backgrounds seem to be getting darker, don't they? These are keeping their light background. These wands seem to be getting darker as we go. Yeah. Red. Very interesting commentary, isn't it? Red. And here we go with the Eight. Lovely. Even though the wands get thinner, we notice all that detail is right there. These wands are very, very simple. And we lose the red in the center. And the Nine of Wands. Notice the split here at the top, which is interesting. Almost like they almost made a mistake. Yeah? It almost became a 10 here at the top. And the 10. No? So, two wands in the back. Lovely. We don't see the wands through the woven wands in front, do we? But these decorations are just gorgeous. Okay, so Chevalier de Baston, Chevalier de Baston. Very similar. His wand looks a lot simpler than his wand, doesn't it? The horse's cloak, blanket, is much larger than this one. This almost looks like an afterthought, like a tail coming off the back. Horses are facing different directions. This horse looks much more clever than this horse to me. But notice here, the legs. This looks like a metal armor over the calves here, whereas we don't get that here. Although I don't see a foot. I don't see a foot here where we do see a foot here. Okay, moving on to the Valle De Baston. Why are the knights coming before the valets in this deck? If you know, let me know below. Let me know in the comments below. Interesting. He's got a little spot here on his cheek. Again, this wand looks very rudimentary. Looks very rudimentary here. Whereas this one looks a little bit more detailed, shall we say? Got the socks, the leggings. We got a kind of garter around the knee. Interesting. Okay, so the Valle De Baston. Valle De Baston. Interesting. Now remember that these wands in this deck were much more refined. However, the Queen's wand in this deck is much more like the Swiss wands. Yeah, a little knobby at the top. Much more refined looking wand than this one. This looks more like either a sports paddle or a club of some kind. This almost looks like it could be a shield, whereas we don't get any of that. Yeah? Is this hair? Is this her hair, or is this a fur shawl? Very interesting differences. And the king, Roi de Baston. Both of them looking young. Does it look like there's a mustache here on him? Very clear indication of the chair in the back. This could be a chair, might not be a chair. Who knows? I do not know. But notice this wand is very different. Let's see, do the king and queen face each other? No, they do not. How about for the Swiss deck? No, they do not. Okay. But you notice that the queen and king in this deck were all both looking to the right. Oh, they're the same for this deck. Both of them look like they're about to... This one really looks like it's stabbing his heel. This one is a little bit far away. The danger is a little less imminent. Very difficult to see this pointy end at the bottom, isn't it? And here we go with this. Whoa, the sword is upside down. Okay, so Ace of Swords, hand coming out of the clouds. We got the two different, well, okay, these branches look the same on both decks. Well, okay, I don't know. One is, these two plants are generally different, and I guess they're different, but they don't look as different as they do in most other decks. And they look similarly less different in both of these decks, which is interesting. Okay, and the Two of Swords. Notice here, we have the same ends, top and bottom, in the Besançon deck, whereas in the Swiss deck we have more of a hilt, a hilt, yes, to the swords. And a round central decoration. And here we go with the three. A much more refined looking sword coming up the center than this one. Much clunkier looking sword to me. Now we've got floral here, no floral here. These, I wonder what those are. They almost look like olives, but I don't think they're supposed to be olives. And here we go with the Four of Swords. Okay, we got a flower in the center. This flower looks more detailed, more refined. We got hilts at the top and hilts at the bottom. Same top and bottom here. Here we go with the Five. Okay, now, I'm going to turn this one around because I want my fives to be pointing up. Okay, yes. These swords in this deck look more refined than these central swords to me, still. Here we go with the Six. Different flowers, yeah? More of a balloon flower here than this one. And the Seven. A thick sword here and a more refined looking sword here. A thinner looking sword. Less of a bludgeon. And we notice the different color on the hilt here. And the Eight of Swords. Beautiful. Different floral decorations. Yeah. 4 hilts on the bottom, 4 hilts on the top. And the 9 coming right up. Even though there's almost no room on the Swiss deck, we notice that this sword is still pretty thick, whereas this sword is very thin. Well, much thinner. Much thinner than the previous sword in the 7. Beautiful. Beautifully done. And the 10 of Swords. Now, okay. For me, I want my swords to be pointed this way. That's where I want my swords to be pointed. Notice that we've got the swords going in between the swords in the back. Here we don't get that as much. Well, that's very interesting. So we get that a little bit here, but we don't get it here as much. Yeah, this one is just barely going through the front. This one is gone through the front down here and is sticking out from behind. This is just starting to go in between here. But this one doesn't look like it. Very interesting differences. And okay, why am I now missing a chevalier? Let's do this. Okay. Chevalier de paix. Chevalier de paix. Okay. What do we get here? The shoes on these horses are different, right? But generally, these two knights are very, very similar. The horses, this horse looks a little bit more natural to me, I suppose, but very similar to me. And here we go with the valet. Valet, both looking in the same direction. The hilts in the right hand. Let's see, what is that? This looks like a left hand to me, and this looks like a right hand to me. Yeah? So the hilt in the right hand are quite different. This one's going all the way down to the ground. The color variations here, this one does not seem to be going all the way down to the ground, and a very simple sheath. I'm sorry, did I call this a hilt? I meant that this was a sheath. Okay, clothes differences. Hat. Like this tunic, like this hat. And the Royan de Espée. Red sword, blue sword. Very clear chair, looking a little bit like they could be wings, I suppose. Interesting. Here we go with the Roi de Espée. Very difficult to see the wand or the baton here in his left hand. Very easy to see on this side. Similar chairs, definitely both interiors. Hat here is more decorated. We got the face on the épée here where we don't get it here. But we do get differences in the knee armor in both of them. And here we go with the cups. Notice that these cups are both very similar. Both Swiss-looking cups. To my mind, Swiss-looking cups. Because they remind me of the JJ Swiss. If you know the one JJ Swiss, you'll recognize this cup. And here we move to the two. We notice here on the left, we've got the name of Tarot Fin de J.B. Benoit à Strasbourg. So this was created in Strasbourg. This was created by J.R., but we don't get that detailed information here that we would get in this card. But again, the Two of Pentacles in this deck, if you recall, the Two of Pentacles, the Two of Denier in this deck did not have information about the printer. So the information is here on the Two of Cups. This deck, however, did have information about the printer, though it was so light we could not read it clearly. So having just the initials here would be plenty. Here we go with the Three of Cups, Three of Cups, Three of Cups, Three of Cups. You'll notice the differences in the cups. Yeah? Looking much more like a Tarot de Marseille cup, this looking more like a Swiss cup. Even though the Ace of Cups were both very similar. Here we go with the Four of Cups. Much more detailed floral decorations. Here we go with the Five of Cups. Although we do get flowers here where we don't get clear flowers here. Here we are with the Six of Cups. Very dark coloring down here, very light at the top, probably just because of age. The aging of the cards. Here we go with this. Oh, now that's interesting. I've not seen that before. Here we have with the Seven of Cups. That's 3, 6, 7. We've got these two X's here. And then Eventi. And here are two more X's down here. What's up with that? I have not seen that before. I wasn't expecting that, and I don't know what it means. If you know, let me know in the comments below. Very interesting. Okay, here we go with the 9. I'm sorry, the 8. The 8 of Cups. And you'll notice that these two cups are much more separated than these two. These look much closer in relationship. The floral design separates the two central cups in the Besançon deck. And here's the 9. Here's the 9. Lovely. Notice the 2 down here, the 2 here. So these might be shadows from another printing, perhaps? I don't know. We don't get any numbers here. Yeah? Which is something I should have pointed out earlier. Yeah? We don't get any numbers in the cups. We don't get any numbers in the cups in the Swiss deck, whereas we do get numbers in the Besançon. And some extra odd numbers here, top and bottom. Here we go with the 10. Open at the top. Notice the 11, top and bottom here. Both pointed the same, both open here, pouring out, but different shaped cups. Different kinds of openings. And here we go with the Valle de Coupe. Valet de Coupe. Valet de Coupe. Looking more like, I don't know, this to me looks more like his hat. This could be, I guess they're both hats to me, frankly speaking. Yeah, because this actually has its cover on it. This looks like it actually has a cover underneath his or her or their cloth covering. Let's see the rise of a cover here, of a top to this cup. No flower here, flower here. Here we go to the Chevalier de Coupe. Chevalier de Coupe. Open cup, closed cup. Much lighter face here, much more clearly seen face. And his leg gets a little bit weird down here below the knee, doesn't it? Interesting. Okay, to the Queen. Reine de Coupe. Reine de Coupe. This Queen looks like she's a little bit more face forward than this Queen. I mean, their eyes are both pointed off to the side, but the face. Now notice, her cup, well, yes, her cup has a cover to it, where the Knight did not. The Knight of this deck here also had a cover to it. The cup of this Knight had a cover to it. All the cups of the courts seem to have covers in this deck. Holding a wand. Lovely. Her chair is very clear here, missing. I don't see a back to this chair, unless this is a back. I'm not sure what that is. And finally, the King of Cups, Roi de Coupe. Covered, uncovered. So what do you think? Which of these decks, or do you like both of them? Which of these decks do you like? Or do you like both of them? I will give both of them a quick shuffle. I'm not going to pull a card from these decks because I have a class to teach soon. So let me try doing a quick shuffle of these. First, this is the Besançon. Much easier to shuffle than my La Corte dei Tarocchi deck, which was much thicker art paper. This is going to be much easier to shuffle. Overhand, I'll get used to it. I'm not a great overhand shuffler, frankly. Today is my frankly speaking day. Let me go to the Svizzero, the Swiss deck. Get the cards back all together. They slid around just a little bit. I have a feeling this is going to shuffle even more easily. Oh yes. The cardstock on this deck is very easy to shuffle. Very, very smooth. It's a much thinner art paper. Although, because it is thinner, you'll notice that there is more curl. It's more affected by humidity. Now that's probably going to work itself out over time. But right now, taking it out of the box, the change of humidity has caused this card to curl up quite a bit. And this was the Roi de Coupe, which was at the bottom. Okay, so let's try overhanding this deck. Okay, yes. Very easy to overhand, even for a klutz like me. Very nice. So, again, the backs. Lovely decks. Lovely, lovely decks. And once again, this is the Tarocco Marsiglia Svizzero, the Swiss deck from 1804. And this is the Tarocco di Besançon from 1700. So friends, let me know what you think. Hit the like button if you liked watching this video. If you're still here, thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell if you haven't done so yet. And also, share this with somebody who you think might be interested in one or both of these decks. And also, comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you own these? If you don't, which of these might be interesting for you? Are you shopping around for one or both of these decks? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, friends, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.